You're going to want to write this down because there are moments in your life when words lose their power, when you've explained, defended, justified, and still they don't hear you. You've cried through the conversations, written the long texts, poured your heart out, and the result is always the same: silence, distance, confusion. And it starts to wear you down. You start asking yourself, what else can I say? What else can I do? But here's the truth I learned the hard way. It's not about saying more. It's about saying less and meaning it. See, when someone keeps pulling away from you, when you feel that emotional wall go up, that familiar coldness creeping in, your first instinct is to close the gap. You chase, you explain, you try to fix what you didn't break because you care, because you want connection, because you were taught that silence means danger. But every time you move closer to someone who's avoiding you, you're actually moving further from yourself. And I want you to hear this. You don't lose respect because they stop listening. You lose respect the moment you stop listening to yourself. So today, I'm going to give you one sentence, one single sentence that changes everything. It's simple. It's calm. It's powerful. But before I give it to you, I need you to understand why it matters. Because if you say it from fear, it won't land. If you say it to get a reaction, it'll backfire. But if you say it from truth, from grounded self-worth, it becomes the moment the entire energy between you and that person shifts. See, we've been taught that strength looks like shouting, like confrontation, like standing your ground and proving your point. But the truth is, real strength is quiet. It's steady. It's the kind of power that doesn't need validation. When you understand what's really happening between you and someone who avoids connection, you stop fighting to be understood and start leading with understanding. You stop chasing attention and start commanding respect. And that's what this sentence does. It's not about winning an argument. It's about reclaiming balance. It's about ending the emotional tug of war and saying, I will no longer participate in the chaos. This is the moment where you stop begging to be seen and start standing in your own presence. Because when someone keeps withdrawing, they're not rejecting you. They're revealing their relationship with closeness. And your job, your sacred, powerful job, is not to fix that. It's to stay rooted in your peace. So I want you to imagine this. You're in a conversation that feels one-sided. You're trying to connect, and it feels like you're speaking into a void. Instead of pleading, instead of explaining, instead of matching their distance with more noise, you take a breath. You feel the power rise in your chest, not anger, not pride, but calm certainty. And you say this one sentence, and suddenly everything inside you stops spinning because you just stopped the pattern. I'll tell you exactly what that sentence is in a moment. But first, let's break down why you've been giving your power away without realizing it. Because when you understand the psychology of disrespect, you'll finally see that this isn't about them hearing you, it's about you hearing yourself again. Let's talk about what disrespect actually is. Because most people think disrespect is loud, it's yelling, it's criticism, it's name-calling or ignoring your feelings. But no, that's just the surface. The real disrespect happens long before the shouting. It happens in silence. It happens in those little moments where someone keeps showing you who they are and you keep explaining why they should be different. That's the moment you teach them how to tune you out. Disrespect isn't always intentional. Sometimes it's simply learned. Avoidant people, the ones who pull away when things get close, they don't mean to hurt you. Their nervous system does it for them. Their brain has learned that closeness equals danger, that love equals loss. So when you lean in, when you raise your voice, when you try to reason with them, what they hear isn't your love. What they hear is threat. And here's the painful truth. The more you explain your worth, the less they can feel it. It's not because you're wrong. It's because your energy has shifted from certainty to convincing. You start speaking from fear instead of power. You start chasing respect instead of embodying it. And once that happens, the dynamic flips. You're no longer two equals in a relationship. You're the pursuer and the protector. You're trying to manage their comfort while abandoning your own. And I know you don't do it because you're weak. You do it because you care, because you want connection, because you don't want the silence to mean goodbye. But listen closely. When you keep over-explaining yourself to someone who doesn't want to understand you, you're not fighting for connection anymore. You're fighting for control. And control is the enemy of respect. Respect is calm. Respect is still. Respect is when you can look at someone pulling away from you and think, I don't need to chase you to know my value. You can feel it right now, can't you? That tightness in your chest that says, but if I stop explaining, they'll think I don't care. That's the lie. That's the trap. Because the truth is, silence isn't always disinterest sometimes. It's the only way left to show dignity. See, every relationship operates on emotional rhythm. One person reaches, the other responds. One gives energy, the other receives it. But when that balance tips, when you're always the one reaching, you're teaching them a dangerous lesson, that your presence doesn't need to be respected because it's guaranteed. That's why when you finally step back, they panic. That's why when you finally stop chasing, everything changes. Because your absence isn't punishment, it's a mirror. And before I tell you the sentence that creates that mirror on purpose, I want you to understand this. People don't respect words they don't have to earn. When you speak endlessly, you're giving your energy away for free. When you go quiet from peace, not pain, you're showing your value without saying a thing. So when I tell you this sentence in a moment, you're not going to use it to get respect. You're going to use it to restore it. Because real respect doesn't start when they see your worth. It starts when you stop arguing with your own. That's why this sentence matters so much. It interrupts the oldest pattern you've been stuck in, chasing understanding from someone who can't give it yet. It's not angry. It's not defensive. It's simply the truth spoken from peace. And when you say it, everything, the tone, the energy, the balance between you begins to shift. So let's talk about that sentence. Let's talk about what to actually say and why it's so disarmingly powerful that it resets both your energy and theirs. Here it is. The sentence that changes everything. I respect where you are right now, and I'm going to give you space. Say it slowly, because those words are more than a boundary. They're an energetic reset. Let me break it down. I respect where you are right now. That phrase alone carries power. It says, I see you. I'm not trying to fix you. I accept that you are where you are. And do you know what happens when someone who fears closeness hears that? Their nervous system exhales. Avoidant people are not allergic to love. They're allergic to pressure. They crave connection, but they fear losing control in it. So when you say, I respect where you are, what you're really saying is, I'm safe. I'm not going to chase. I'm not going to demand. And that second part, and I'm going to give you space, that's the release. That's where you stop tugging at the rope. That's where your energy stops reaching outward and begins coming home. You're not slamming a door. You're opening a window. You're not ending the conversation. You're changing the frequency. And here's the secret. That sentence isn't really for them. It's for you. It's a declaration to yourself that you're done trying to earn respect through effort. You're going to embody it through calm. When you say those words, something happens inside your body. You can feel the tension drop out of your shoulders. Your chest loosens. Your breathing deepens. Because your nervous system finally gets the memo. We're safe now. We're done chasing danger disguised as love. And in that instant, you become grounded again. Now, does that mean the other person will instantly wake up, run back, apologize, and say, you were right? No. But that's not the point. This sentence isn't a spell that changes them. It's a boundary that stabilizes you. You see, for people who avoid closeness, control equals safety. The moment they feel someone pulling at them, they retreat. But when you calmly step back, when you say, I respect where you are, and I'm going to give you space, you're returning control to both of you. You're saying, You get to be where you are, and I get to be at peace. That's not manipulation. That's emotional leadership. It's the difference between pressure and presence, between reaction and regulation, between chaos and clarity. Now, some of you might be thinking, but won't they take advantage of my silence? Won't they think I don't care? No, because silence doesn't mean withdrawal when it comes from peace. It means you've shifted from trying to connect to being connected to yourself, and that's magnetic. Because the moment you stop pleading for respect, you start radiating it. When you stand in calm certainty, the energy between you transforms. The avoidant doesn't feel cornered anymore. They feel curiosity. They start to wonder, what changed? Why does it feel different this time? They don't realize it yet, but what they're feeling is your absence of fear. That's what makes this sentence so powerful. It's short. It's grounded. It doesn't defend. It doesn't accuse. It doesn't play games. It's love without attachment. It's peace that doesn't require explanation. So the next time you feel that old panic, that urge to explain, to fix, to chase, I want you to stop, breathe, and remember this sentence. I respect where you are right now, and I'm going to give you space. Because every time you say it, you're not losing someone. You're regaining yourself. And when you do, that calm, steady energy becomes the foundation for everything that comes next, the science behind why it works, and what's really happening inside their mind and body when you speak it. Let's talk about why this sentence works not just emotionally, but biologically. When you say, I respect where you are right now, and I'm going to give you space, something extraordinary happens inside the body, both yours and theirs. You're not just speaking words, you're rewiring a nervous system that's been operating on fear. You see, the avoidant doesn't fear you. They fear what connection stirs inside them, the vulnerability, the unpredictability, the possibility of loss. Their brain has been trained to equate closeness with danger. It's not conscious, it's automatic, it's survival. When they feel you reaching, their body sounds an alarm. We're losing control, we're being pulled in. So they retreat. They build distance, not to hurt you, but to protect themselves. And here's the beautiful irony. The harder you chase, the louder their alarm becomes. But when you stop, when you take that breath and say, I respect where you are right now, you're sending a completely different signal. Their nervous system hears, the threat is gone. I'm safe. I can breathe again. That's what creates the first crack in the wall. Not words of persuasion, not emotional outbursts, but calm, grounded neutrality. Think of it like this. If you've ever tried to approach a skittish animal, you know this truth. The moment you run toward it, it bolts. But if you stand still, soften your energy, and look away, something magical happens. The animal starts to come closer on its own. Humans are not that different, especially those whose nervous systems have learned to equate love with danger. When you step back in calm respect, their brain and body begin to recalibrate. That tension they used to feel around you, the pressure to perform, to defend, to justify it, starts to melt away. Your calm becomes contagious. This is what psychologists call co-regulation. When two nervous systems are in contact, they mirror each other. If one person is anxious and pleading, the other grows tense and defensive. But when one person becomes still, when one person grounds themselves, it invites the other to regulate too. That's what this sentence does. It's not manipulation, it's modeling safety. And here's where it gets even deeper. The moment you stop chasing, your nervous system also starts to heal. You've been living in a state of hypervigilance, constantly scanning for signs, waiting for the message, interpreting every silence as danger. Your body has been on alert, thinking it's keeping you safe. But all it's been doing is draining your peace. When you speak that sentence, you're telling your own brain, we're safe now. We don't have to prove anything. We don't have to earn love today. That's the beginning of emotional regulation, the moment where your peace no longer depends on someone else's behavior. And guess what? That's what makes you magnetic. Because energy doesn't lie. When you stop grasping, people feel it. When you stop needing, people sense it. It's the same reason some people walk into a room and instantly shift the mood. They're grounded. They're not reaching for validation. They're radiating self-trust. That's the invisible force behind this sentence. It's why the avoidant eventually feels drawn back toward you, not because you played a tactic, but because your stillness speaks louder than all your previous words combined. When you're no longer fighting their fear, you're giving them a chance to face it on their own. When you stop chasing reassurance, you start embodying it. When you let go of control, you invite connection. This is the paradox of healing. The less you do, the more power you hold. That's why this works. Because it doesn't just change communication, it changes physiology. You become the calm in the room, the safety they never had, the proof that love doesn't have to feel like pressure. And when that happens, the energy between you shifts. The pattern that's been repeating, you chasing, them retreating, begins to dissolve. And in its place, something new begins. Balance. But I want to show you what that balance actually looks like. What happens next when you stop chasing and finally come home to yourself? Now, here's where the transformation happens. Because once you understand what's happening in your nervous system and theirs, you stop chasing. You stop begging for answers. You stop performing for love that was never supposed to be earned in the first place. Something inside you starts to click. You begin to realize that all this time, you weren't just chasing them. You were chasing certainty. You wanted to feel safe. You wanted to know where you stood. You wanted to believe that if you just explained it one more time, they'd finally understand how much you cared. But here's the paradox. The more you chase safety outside yourself, the more unsafe you become inside yourself. Because every time you reach for someone who's retreating, your body hears one message: I'm not enough until they come closer. That's the loop that keeps you stuck. But the moment you stop, when you take a breath, stand still, and say that one sentence, the loop breaks. You stop looking to them to define your worth. You start feeling it in your own stillness. And that's when everything inside you begins to change. At first, it's subtle. You notice you're not checking your phone as often. You notice you can sit in silence without that anxious heartbeat in your throat. You start to realize that peace doesn't feel boring. It feels like coming home. Because for the first time, you're not living reactively. You're living consciously. You're not responding to someone else's withdrawal. You're responding to your own awareness. And that shift from chasing to centered is the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll ever build. When you stop chasing, something powerful happens. The other person finally has space to feel their own discomfort. They start to notice the silence. They start to notice the calm. They start to feel what life is like without the energy you've always poured into them. And whether they recognize it consciously or not, something begins to stir. They start to wonder, why does it feel different? Why does it feel quieter but heavier? Why do I keep thinking about them? You see, when you stop reaching, you stop carrying both halves of the relationship. You set the balance right again. And here's the part that no one tells you. The respect you've been craving doesn't come from them first, it comes from you. Because when you act from alignment, when your words and your worth match, people can feel it. You no longer sound like you're asking for peace. You are peace. You no longer sound like you're pleading for respect. You embody it. And people, even avoidant people, respond to energy more than effort. That's what this shift is all about. You stop proving and you start embodying. You stop chasing and you start leading. Because here's the truth. You can't control who stays or who leaves, but you can control the energy that meets them when they show up. And that energy, when it's rooted in calm, changes everything. So when you feel the urge to reach, to fix, to make sure they still care, I want you to do the opposite. Take a breath. Put your hand on your heart. Remind yourself, I'm not here to chase peace. I am peace. And then say the sentence again, even if they're not there to hear it. I respect where you are right now, and I'm going to give you space. Because every time you do, you teach your body a new story. A story where love doesn't mean losing yourself. A story where calm is your superpower. A story where the only person you ever needed to reach for was you. That's the moment you reclaim your balance. And from there, a whole new reality begins where you're not reacting to them anymore, but observing them from peace. And that's when you start to see the truth. How they respond next isn't your test, it's theirs. Let's talk about that next. Because once you stop chasing, they will respond. They always do. And what you'll see next are three very different reactions, and each one tells you exactly where they are emotionally. So now you've stepped back. You've stopped explaining. You've reclaimed your peace. And you're wondering what happens next. Because when you stop chasing, when your energy shifts, they feel it. They always do. And it triggers one of three responses. Each one tells you exactly where they are in their own growth and how you should hold your ground. Let's walk through them. Response 1, relief. At first, they'll exhale. You'll feel it too. The tension between you finally breaks. They might even seem happier, lighter, free. Don't mistake that for indifference, it's decompression. Avoidants are used to emotional noise. When you fall silent, it feels like the pressure's gone. Their body tells them, see, this feels safe again. Let them have that relief. Don't rush to fill it. Don't panic if they don't reach out. This stage is necessary. It resets the emotional baseline. During this time, you stay grounded. You live. You breathe. You show your nervous system that quiet doesn't mean danger. It means peace. Your silence isn't absence. It's balance. Then something subtle happens. The calm that felt like relief starts to feel empty. And that's when we move to the second response. Response 2, curiosity. They start to wonder, why isn't she texting? Why isn't he checking in? Where did that energy go that used to orbit around me? Their nervous system notices the change before their mind does. They'll scroll your profile. They'll ask mutual friends. They'll test the waters with small messages, little breadcrumbs that sound harmless but mean everything. Don't chase those crumbs. Stay in that same energy, steady, kind, unbothered. You don't have to perform calm. You've become it. And that contrast, your new stillness against their old chaos, creates magnetic pull. But this is where most people slip, because the minute curiosity appears, you rush back in, you explain again, you open the floodgates, and the cycle repeats. Don't do that. Your silence isn't a tactic, it's a teacher. Let it teach both of you. Because after curiosity comes the real test, the third response. Response 3, engagement. They reach out not out of habit, but out of recognition. They've felt the gap long enough to realize what they lost wasn't control, it was connection. And this is where you must stay anchored. They might come back softly, like nothing happened. They might come back emotionally, admitting what they felt. They might even come back defensively, testing if you're still safe to approach. Your job isn't to predict it. Your job is to meet every version of their return with the same energy that got you here. Calm, clear, consistent. You don't need to lecture. You don't need to say, see, I told you so. You simply stay grounded in truth. Respect isn't earned through words. It's maintained through behavior. And if their behavior shows growth, you can open the door slowly. If it doesn't, you keep it closed without resentment. Either way, you've already won. Because when you stop reacting and start observing, you become the mirror. They can't escape. You reflect the difference between love that chases and love that stands still. And whether they rise to meet you or not, you've learned the greatest lesson. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone who's uncertain about it. Your steadiness is your proof. Your calm is your magnet. And your peace is your final boundary. But to stay in that place, to not slip back into old patterns, you have to know what not to do next. You've learned how to step back. Now you need to learn how to hold the line. Let's talk about that. Let me tell you something that could save you a lot of heartbreak. When you finally find your calm, when you learn to say, I respect where you are right now, and I'm going to give you space, the temptation to use that calm as a strategy will show up, and I want you to resist it. Because if you use your silence to control them, it's not peace, it's performance. And energy never lies. The avoidant will feel that. They might not know why, but something in them will tighten. Because deep down, they can sense when your calm isn't genuine, when it's just waiting for a reaction. So here's the first don't. Don't weaponize peace. Peace loses power the moment you use it as bait. The second don't repeat the sentence like a spell. You don't have to say it over and over, hoping it finally clicks for them. Once is enough. Then let your actions, your stillness, your energy do the rest. And here's the third don't. Don't confuse giving space with building walls. Space is about respect. Walls are about fear. One creates clarity. The other creates distance. Giving someone space doesn't mean disappearing. It means detaching from the emotional tug of war. It means living your life, nurturing your peace, keeping your door open, but only to honesty. And one more thing, don't wait in silence. If you're sitting there staring at your phone, counting the days, you haven't given space, you've just changed tactics. You're still waiting for their movement to give you permission to move forward. That's not freedom. That's paralysis in disguise. Real peace doesn't check the clock. Real peace doesn't refresh messages. Real peace says, I've let go with love, and I trust that what's meant for me will never require chasing. Now, I know that sounds easier said than done, but I want you to hear me clearly. Giving someone space is not about losing them. It's about gaining clarity, because if the connection was real, they'll feel the shift. And if it wasn't, silence will reveal that faster than words ever could. You can't teach someone how to respect you by explaining your worth. You teach it by living like you already know it. And that's what this silence is doing. It's teaching both of you through stillness and them through consequence. So as you hold that calm, don't fill it with anxiety. Fill it with growth. Don't wait. Heal. Don't analyze. Reflect. Don't control. Release. Because respect, once reclaimed, needs protection. And that's what we're going to talk about next, how to take this stillness you've built and turn it into strength that lasts. Not for a week, not until they come back, but for good. You've learned how to step back. You've learned how to speak calm instead of chaos. Now it's time to make that your new default, to turn this from a moment into a mindset. Because the goal isn't just to handle one avoidant partner better. The goal is to build a reflex, a respect reflex, so strong that you never lose yourself again in anyone's uncertainty. Here's what that means. Every relationship you have, romantic, family, work, operates on the same law of energy exchange. If you keep giving what isn't reciprocated, you create imbalance. And imbalance always turns into resentment. So integration begins when you start noticing that imbalance sooner, when your body feels the drain, and instead of over-explaining, you pause, you breathe, you remember, my energy is valuable. You start leading every conversation from presence, not panic. When someone crosses a boundary, you don't rush to fix it, you name it calmly. When silence appears, you don't interpret it as rejection, you interpret it as information. That's the respect reflex. It's what happens when your self-worth becomes muscle memory. And here's what's wild. Once you embody it, people around you start changing too. Because energy teaches louder than words. Your calm becomes contagious. Your boundaries start to reset the tone of every room you walk into. Think about it. How many times have you let someone's reaction determine your emotional weather? One text, one tone, and suddenly your peace was gone. But once you practice this reflex, something shifts. You stop matching energy, you start setting it. That's emotional leadership. That's power without noise. And I want you to understand, this isn't about pride. It's not about walking around saying, no one can mess with me. It's about walking around knowing, I don't need to chase love to prove I deserve it. That's freedom. That's what every healthy connection is built on. So here's your practice. When you feel that old pull to fix or to explain, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this from peace or from fear? If it's fear, breathe, step back, let your silence speak. And if it's peace, move forward with clarity, not attachment, because once you start living like this, you'll notice something incredible. The right people don't feel threatened by your calm. They're drawn to it. They recognize safety in it. They start meeting you where you are instead of running from it. That's what real respect looks like. It's mutual regulation, not manipulation. It's when love stops being survival and starts being stability. And you'll feel it in your bones. That sense of quiet confidence that says, I can love you without losing me. That's the respect reflex. And it's the foundation of every boundary, every connection, every act of self-worth that comes after this. But before we finish, I want to take you to the final piece, the part that ties it all together. Because when you master this calm, when you stand firm in your peace, you discover something even deeper. Stillness isn't just a boundary, it's power. Let's talk about that. Let's end right here at the still point. Because after all the noise, after all the reaching, after all the proving, this is where peace begins. Stillness, that's the moment where the story changes. When your worth stops being a debate, when your energy stops chasing what was never meant to understand it, when silence stops being punishment and starts becoming protection, you realize that you don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to convince anyone to see your value. You just need to stand in it. So I want you to hear this again, slowly, like a truth you already know. I respect where you are right now, and I'm going to give you space. That's not a line. It's a decision. It's a declaration that says, I will no longer fight for peace by losing myself. It's the first boundary that doesn't need defense, the kind that doesn't bruise, doesn't beg, doesn't burn bridges. It simply stands. Because you're not saying I'm done, you're saying I'm grounded. You're not closing the door. You're closing the loop of reactivity. You're teaching yourself, maybe for the first time, that love and peace are not opposites, they're twins. And one can't survive without the other. And you know what happens when you live from that place? Your world reorganizes around your calm. The chaos stops choosing you. People treat you differently, not because they've changed, but because you have. Because when you carry peace like a standard, life starts rising to meet it. So from here on out, remember this. Respect isn't demanded, it's demonstrated. Love isn't proven, it's practiced. And stillness isn't silence, it's strength in motion. This is your turning point. The moment where you stop waiting for someone to come back, to apologize, to validate, and you start walking in a new direction, lighter, clearer, freer. You've learned the power of stillness. Now, it's time to live it. And when the noise of life gets loud again, and it will come back to this sentence, let it remind you that your peace isn't negotiable. Because in the end, the loudest voice in the room isn't the one that shouts. It's the one that's grounded. It's the one that says quietly, but unmistakably, I know who I am, and that's enough.